Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command World at War, a World War II turn-based strategy game. This is, I think, episode number 28 or so of our series playing through as the Allies. It is March of 1942. It is still sort of wintry and muddy on the Russian front, and that is a little bit of a saving grace, but the Germans are advancing on Leningrad, they're advancing on Moscow, they're advancing in the south towards Stalingrad, and while it's unlikely that they'll take any of those objectives this turn, it is certainly a concern on the Russian front that we don't have sufficient forces to stand up to the German menace. The Russian army has been ravaged, and we have not done a good enough job preparing our forces for the onslaught. Additionally, we are playing the game at a level of difficulty that gives all the German units one level of experience bonus, so that plays into this game pretty handsomely, that every single unit always has a +1 to its experience, while we do not have that. Now, one thing that did occur in the last turn or two to our advantage is that Portugal has declared war on the Axis, and because the fascist regime in Spain have declared war on the Allies in support of the Germans, that has actually opened up a second front. So we're basically fighting the Napoleonic Peninsula campaign all over again, with Salamanca just within reach for British troops in the north, and then the American troops in the south driving in an effort to take Cadiz, and more importantly, the supply source of Gibraltar, which has fallen to Spanish forces. North Africa is a victory in part. The Tunisian government and the French government in Algiers have yet to pick a side, but in the event that they do, we have forces in North Africa still ready to deal with them. If they don't pick a side, then we have forces ready here to reinforce the invasion of the continent. The one thing that's holding us back from sending them to help the continent right now is, one, we don't have enough money to throw them all on transports, two, they're all a little bit beaten up, and three, I don't have long-range transports in galore for the British, and which means that we would really need to have ports available because the strait is closed to us with the Spanish owning both Tangier and Gibraltar. We can't move through the Strait of Gibraltar, and so if we want to move those forces in any sort of meaningful, quick period of time, we really need to take a port like Cartagena or Gibraltar and allow us to ship reinforcements efficiently and effectively. That's the situation right now in March of 42. The Japanese are having success on the continent. They're having success in the islands, and that's sort of what we're dealing with there. But let's go ahead and jump forward into April and see what April has in store for us. General Władysław Anders. Stalin is willing to allow us to evacuate thousands of Polish soldiers from the USSR. It would be wise to take advantage of this offer so that we can leave the USSR and head for the Middle East. Once there, hopefully we will be able to persuade the British to form the men into corps so that we can play a full role in the struggle ahead for a free Poland. Alternatively, we can stay in the USSR and seek service in the Red Army. Would you like to evacuate as many of our soldiers as possible from the USSR to the Middle East? Yes. Or would you rather stay in the USSR? No. Negotiations took place between Stalin and General Anders in the spring and summer of 1942, leading to the departure of tens of thousands of Polish soldiers and a smaller number of civilians from the USSR. Once in the Middle East, the British provided them with assistance in early 1943, started forming a Polish corps for service in the Middle East and Mediterranean. This corps distinguished itself at Monte Cassino the following year. If you say yes, then the British will have the opportunity to form a Polish corps at Kuwait. If you say no, then the USSR will have the opportunity to form a Polish corps to support the Red Army operations on the Eastern Front. I'm going to say no. Historically, the answer would be yes, but I'm going to say no because, frankly, we need more soldiers on the Russian front, not on the Western Allies front. And I'm sure the Polish soldiers would be very upset about this decision, but that's just the reality of it. Meanwhile, Mao Zedong continues to grow concerned about the Japanese advances in China, which could lead to the communists in China joining our cause. Axis radars are disrupting convoys between the US and the UK, Sudan and the UK, and Australia and the UK. We're having successful advanced tank development, as well as infantry warfare development, spying and intelligence development, and anti-submarine warfare development. So a lot of technology is going on successfully here. Interestingly, though, the 195 MPPs coming from the British economy did successfully make it at 100% clip to the Soviet Union. So the U.S. sent 80 MPP, the British sent 190, 40% of the entire British economy was sent to the Soviets. The British need more money to support the invasion of Europe, but Russia can't be weakened at this time by the failure to give them as much as we possibly can in their struggle against the Germans. Whew, that's a breathful. Meanwhile, the Japanese are advancing along the New Guinea coast, driving slowly toward Port Moresby. Russian destroyers being engaged there. Spanish cruisers are attempting to engage us. German submarines are torpedoing American battleships and cruisers off the coast of Portugal. Oh my god, they have a lot of submarines. Fortunately, none of them did all that much damage. The Germans do have an aircraft carrier, the Graf Zeppelin, and it just sank the Russian Navy's destroyer there. Meanwhile, an enemy was at a destroyer, just tried to attack our battleship and got lit up off the coast of Portugal, so we just destroyed an enemy unit there, which was a nice occurrence. Japan continuing their advance in China. Meanwhile, on the Russian front, we did counterattack one corps there between the last video, and we inflicted 4 casualties by this army of ours to the south of Leningrad without loss, and so it looked like the Germans are going to reinforce that corps by 2 without any actual attack. Meanwhile, the Graf Zeppelin continues ravaging the Baltic and just sank the Russian submarine fleet in the Baltic as well, and the Baltic's now a German lake. Japanese carriers off the coast of Malaya continue to hammer British troops in that region. Japan has some marines ashore at Kotobaru. Meanwhile, our fighters are doing jack diddly in escort missions near Chengdu. They lost half their strength and did nothing. Japanese tactical air forces hitting some of our ground forces there, doing quite a bit of damage there, almost destroying a Chinese army all by themselves. The weather has cleared in Russia, which is a problem. German and Italian tactical air just wiped out a Russian corps there. Artillery hitting Novograd. South of Leningrad. German infantry is now advancing sort of in central southern Russia. They're flanking our position to the south based out of Rostov, and they're hammering our forces along the Don. That Chinese army near Chengdu just got lit up and destroyed. The advance on Moscow continues as armor out of Kulga knocks out a Russian army there. Attack on Rezev continues. Soviet forces there suffering heavy casualties. Japanese forces advancing out of Chengdu. Armored formations advancing in the south. On the Moscow front, that is. Knocking out an army. Knocking out a garrison at Tula. Advancing along the Crimean front. Japanese armor advancing in China. Japanese paratroopers landing in our rear, in the rear of Changsha in China. Our house of cards is about to come tumbling down. Henan, however, is surrounded, so there's at least that one positive thing in southern China. Problem is I don't have logistics or money to rapidly redeploy forces. The smart thing would probably be to fall back in China into the interior and form some sort of new defensive line. I just don't have the ability to do that. We still have some rain in the north that's hampering the German forces near Leningrad, but in the Moscow and sort of Stalingrad fronts, we're suffering a lot more. A huge German armored fist of 4 armored units there attacking near Moscow. I don't think it's likely that we'll surrender in the next turn, or that Moscow will fall in the next turn, but I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to hold up. It's all a delaying action, hopefully buying enough time for the Western Allies to overwhelm Spain and start threatening Germany from the west. One of the things that the Allies failed to do in my German Let's Play series was they were never really able to gain much of a foothold. They landed in France, but they only had a handful of units along the coast. Axis control of Gibraltar hinders Allied supply in the Mediterranean. Mao Zedong is concerned at the Japanese advances in China. Well, raise your goddamn forces. Meanwhile, Mexico has joined the Allies. Good for them. British commandos are raiding some bases in France. The new Prime Minister of Vichy France. The channel is socked in with rain and fog. No air tonight. All right, so the Russians lost the 13th Garrison, the 18th Army, the 14th Army, the 26th Army, and the 24th Infantry Corps. They also lost the 4th S-4 Sub and the Smilony Destroyer. Germany lost the S-20 Destroyer. China lost the Youth Army. That was a rough turn. Whole bunch of intelligence. That's just great. New U.S. battleship forming in Los Angeles. The Russians are going to mechanized corps and an army. It's still snowing in April. Wow. Let's put the mechanized corps on the Moscow front. We'll put the army on the Stalingrad front. The mechanized corps, I think, will be useful there. I want to try and hit these guys. Give them a little bit of bloody nose. I can't possibly win. But I can bloody them enough to potentially delay their assaults because they take too many casualties. Because they will reinforce. They will spend a turn or two trying to reinforce. Unfortunately, because of the weather, I can't, like, launch any air attacks against them. But all their armored formations down here, this one's down to level 3 strength. This guy's at 5. I mean, they're not in great shape to try and launch a decisive strike at the moment. Okay. Their infantry could split our line here, but I don't think they're going to advance too far this turn. We could move some infantry up to Resnik. These guys are going to counterattack this army and armor in the south. Do some damage down there. None of these troops can inflict any damage on these guys. All right, that corps will fall back. The Leningrad front does have some opportunity. Move our armor forward. God damn it, you guys. All of those attacks were supposed to have some promise, and none of them had any. We did inflict heavy casualties on one of their units down there. So they are a little bit bloodied on the Leningrad front. That's kind of Russia. We've kind of already gone through all of Russia this turn without buying more units yet. We haven't gotten to that. Meanwhile, for whatever reason, these Spanish cruisers have decided that it's a good idea to come out and fight in the open sea against the American battle fleet of 3 battleships out here. It's like, dude, not smart. Hell, let's bring the Royal Navy down here. Let's get the Renown involved. Down she goes. There's some national morale bonus for us. Okay. Alright, we'll attack these troops here near Cadiz. Got him. Okay, so we destroyed that Spanish corps in the south. Now we've taken Cadiz. We're on the verge of Gibraltar. American mechanized troops will attack these Spanish troops at Bazor, or however you pronounce that. The Portuguese forces will come up here and support. And the mechanized troops will attack a second time and overrun them. And take the city, and then drive north and take Salamanca. The British will advance north and take La Corona. I'm not sure how that's not an allied port now. Maybe it will be in a turn or so, I'm not... Alright. Okay, so we've taken that town. And just like that, we're advancing throughout all of Spain. La Corona on the north, Cadiz on the south. Their major ports are all in our hands, at least their major Atlantic ports, their Atlantic coast ports. The American warships now can take shelter in Cadiz. They can take shelter in Lisbon from the Japanese submarines. Or, sorry, German submarines. And we can make a move on Gibraltar and Madrid next turn. We might even be able to make a move on Burgos next turn. Meanwhile, do we have any... So we've got these special forces here of Rhodesia. We're going to go ahead and advance them. And they're going to make a move on the Mediterranean coast of Spain next turn. As soon as they take a Mediterranean port, then we're going to drop in these Canadian tanks. We're going to rip through the rear of the Spanish. So we may land at Barcelona or so. Is it still unoccupied? Most of the Mediterranean Spanish ports are unoccupied. So that could be fun. Look at all of these German forces in Italy already. German engineers, German infantry, German headquarters. They are ready. German paratroopers. Okay. Let's go after these subs here. Damn you, subs. Diving from attack. Okay, so... I think we'll wait with these tanks here for the moment. Because where they are currently, they could get to Cartagena, they could get to Valencia, to Barcelona. Pretty much anywhere they need. I don't know if the long-range transport will be able to get to any of those objectives next turn. But I imagine most of these German troops in Italy would redeploy, I would think. Let's actually do this. Can we put these guys on transports? We can bring this first Canadian Corps on transports and send them south. Oh, shit. They can't get to Porto. They could unload in because that was a friendly port before last turn, but they can't unload at Ferrol because we just took the port this turn. In any event... We'll unload them next turn. We'll have another unit on the Portuguese front. Potentially 3 more if we can land on the back door of Spain. Meanwhile, we should bring our headquarters unit at Mogadishu. across and unload it in Burma. I'm guessing they can't make it. No. I have to force move them. Can't quite get there to Rangoon this turn, but they'll make it most of the way, and then we'll have a British headquarter unit there. To assist the drive in Kota Baru. Maybe we can prevent the fall of Singapore ever occurring, which would be a nice feather in our cap. Could also send some British troops into China, maybe, if we can supply them, to help the Chinese there. Meanwhile, the Japanese troops at Henan are out of supply. Didn't quite wipe them out yet, but there we go. So we destroyed Japanese corps surrounded there in southern China. At least temporarily, it makes me feel better about the situation there. These paratroopers are in our rear, and they have no supply. Let's reinforce these guys. These two Chinese formations will reinforce here in the south. And we'll attack that Japanese armor here to try and take some of the pressure off. I'm hoping those paratroopers can't really do anything. This Japanese armor... Wow! Drove them way back. I really need the communists to frickin' come join my side. Okay. Drive them to the river! Alright, so we're tenuously holding our position in China for the moment. Alright, I'm going to fall back there. Reinforce that guy to full strength. He's not upgraded, though. That's one problem. Hoping those paras are just kind of permanently cut off unless they drive west from Wuhan or they overrun our force at Changsha, which actually is very good supply. I mean, their air power could certainly do some fiendish work on us, but... Ah! Enemy cruiser! Okay, the British still have some money, right? 117. Can we throw anybody on transports? Move them to Moresby and unload. So we just moved the 1st Australian Corps to Moresby to try and hold that place. We're going to spend our British money, the remainder of our British money this turn, reinforcing Australian forces, getting them up to full strength. We're going to get some of these guys to some of the ports along the coast and see if we can't bring some of them forward a little bit. That's kind of all the British money. I think there's still additional forces in India that we haven't used. Unfortunately, the Indian army is Well, they now have infantry weapon level 2. But unfortunately, none of the Navy is Indian. By the way, we have new units to deploy still. The Bengal Corps, which I'm going to deploy here, and then the 10th Indian Army, which I'll deploy here. Okay, we still have to buy Soviet stuff. We still have to do American stuff. Go ahead and reinforce these guys. Can't bring the Colorado down quite yet. Okay, so it's taken me a little bit longer than I would like. Some of these units. Wouldn't mind landing Marines on like Kwajalein or some other national morale objective. The US and Russia both still have quite a bit of money, so we'll go ahead and spend some of that. The US needs headquarters, but we actually have one coming in May of 42 in Charleston. So that's actually about a month away. 2 turns by the looks of it. Same for an army in Charleston. And that'll come before any opportunity to buy a new headquarters. So with that being said, I think I'm going to focus on other things then. Because I have a headquarters in the Pacific in Australia, and I will soon have a headquarters in the US. But rather than spend all my money on that, I do think there is an importance in gaining control of the sea. And to that effect, I would like to start raising some naval vessels. So I haven't really researched submarines all that much. But I'm going to go ahead and buy 2 carriers, 2 escort carriers to supplement my 3 fleet carriers. And then I'm also going to go ahead and raise... How much money do I have left? Should be enough, right? Definitely enough for a core. Not quite enough for an upgraded airborne unit. Fighters we actually kind of have enough of for the moment. Could do a destroyer. But I need more troops. So maybe we'll do special forces. Because apparently Marines are special forces. So we'll do that. So with those new purchases in October, we'll get 2 escort carriers. We also get one in August, so we'll have 3 escort carriers over those 2 turns, really. And we'll also be getting in December of the same year another fleet carrier. So we'll have 4 fleet carriers and 3 escort carriers. That's a pretty strong force. Plus 2 new battleships will be in commission by then. We also will get that Special Forces unit in September to go along with a new army coming in Charleston and a mechanized corps in May as well, and a new headquarters unit there. The Soviets, meanwhile, still have money to spend. They've got a bunch of reinforcements that are on the way. They badly need more. And so I think for the Soviets, I don't know what a shock army is. How does that differ from mechanized? They have better attack values. They have better defense values. Better defense against fighters. Like, what's the comp here? Same attack value as a regular army. Slightly better defense values. Shock army is some kind of particular Soviet institution. They're not quite as good against hard targets. Yeah, what the hell? Well, actually, no. We're going to go with the tried and true existing regular armies because we've lost casualties, which makes their replacements cheaper. When you get the little asterisk next to their name, it means it was a unit that was destroyed previously, which makes it substantially cheaper to raise. And we'll raise some garrisons too. So those new armies and garrisons are all coming online in May of 42. Interestingly enough, all of them look like they're coming in May of 42. Although I feel like I'm missing some units based off what I was raising. Oh, there we go. Some of them are coming in June. So we got a whole bunch of reinforcements coming. If we can just hang on till the summer, it may allow us to postpone our fall. As we start to hopefully gain some steam here in the offensive in Portugal. We've taken Salamanca. We've taken Badajoz. We're at the doorstep of Madrid. At the doorstep of Gibraltar. We've taken La Coruna. We've got a 1st Canadian Corps coming ashore next turn. We probably have a Special Forces amphibious unit and an armored unit coming ashore as well. So this is our invasion of Europe. The front's a little bit spread out here, but if the Germans don't send substantial reinforcements until we get to France, that's a mistake for them because we're going to have a very narrow front to defend if they send forces once we enter France from the south. Problem is, until Vichy comes in, we can only advance up this one single hex through to Bordeaux. But our last intelligence indicated they didn't have any troops in Bordeaux, so that's the situation there. With that being said, guys, that is going to wrap this episode up. I hope you guys are enjoying. Let me know your thoughts below. And as always, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.